Hello everyone, my name is Seamus Killian McCracken. I am not a wizard, though technology does allow us to be anyone we want. Welcome to my new segment. The purpose of this channel is to address the issues and struggles that affect Generation X and Z, as well as anyone seeking advice, wisdom, and guidance on personal growth. Our goal is to foster progress for humanity, rather than holding it back. In this episode, we're focusing on a critical issue: the treatment of women in the United States, focusing on the 19th century to the present. This topic encompasses sensitive subjects such as SA and DA. It's essential to raise awareness among younger generations about how women have been perceived and treated throughout history. One important point I want to emphasize is that this issue cannot be solved by men alone. While men can support the cause, it is women who must lead the charge. It's vital for women to sit back, learn, and raise their voices. Join me as we delve into this important topic and explore the ways we can all contribute to positive change. Thank you for being here, and let's get started.
Hello everyone, my name is Michael. I am a presenter dedicated to exploring causes and effects, offering advice, and sharing wisdom. I focus on sociological and cultural issues, raising awareness about personal growth and self-evolution. Before we dive into the topic at hand, I want to offer a piece of advice. Never be afraid to raise your voice in support of justice against tyranny and atrocities that violate humanity. It's crucial to do your own research on issues that resonate with you. Many people hold back from speaking up out of fear of sounding ignorant or saying something foolish. But really, should that be a concern today? Clamming up rather than opening up only silences voices that matter. Today, we will confront the mistreatment, abuse, and unrealistic expectations stemming from a delusional ideology of equality, civil rights, and human rights. Gloves off. We are going to discuss the discriminatory practices and the mental and physical abuse violating a woman's humanity. Witnessing the relentless condemnation and attacks against women, often sanctioned by those who choose silence out of fear, makes my blood boil. What sickens me even more is that some women attack other women, all to appease fragile male egos desperate to cling to whatever masculinity they perceive they have left. This behavior proves three distressing truths. First, male dependency. Second, self-disrespect and self-loathing. And third, issues of submission and conformity, all rooted in fear. Coming from women in a country that has historically viewed them as mere property, this is not just insulting, it is despicable. It's even more troubling that many women fail to recognize the societal impact created by their abusers. And let's not forget the children caught in the crossfire. Unfortunately, this behavior is becoming increasingly visible and continues to this day. Just be aware, this is not a deep dive on the matter. Trust me, you'll get the point. Discussion in timeline format with the major events of the time, starting from the end of the 19th century and covering up to the present day, then returning to where it all began for a climactic finale. Some of what we will discuss may shock you, as many events occurred not long ago, events that have also shaped the lives of those in this room. Yes, for many, this history is a shared experience. They simply choose to forget.
There are times when nothing can be said, and there are times when there's much to say. Can you not agree that finding yourself between nothing and too much provides the greatest moments of frustration? It's like screaming so loudly that you're heard a good 5 blocks in every direction. Such a behavioral manifestation might be considered taking the low road. However, an alternative is available. It's just far more costly due to product placement, handling costs, and the physical effort required to throw glassware like a professional movie villainess. This approach could be considered taking the high road, but high-end techniques come with a high price. Unfortunately, this is my favorite dramatic act of displaced aggression, my go-to of choice. You must agree, releasing your anger and frustrations on inanimate objects can be extremely satisfying. However, it's still less expensive than most therapy sessions. I've exhausted my high-end savings on the last glassware hallway cotillion I hosted over the Supreme Court's decision on Trump's immunity. Targeting women, attacking their fundamental rights and character while devaluing their integrity is nothing new. This has been going on since the very first day of creation, when God said, "Let there be light, a beacon for the blind to see through the darkness of night." Horse shit! It was to see where all the cockroaches were scattering off to. In other words, it's okay to do in the dark what they can't see in the light. Let me remind everyone, this is not just a political issue over reproductive rights. Oh no! Continued antiquated perceptions of women and their purpose are nothing less than a violation of a woman's human rights. So, why must I alleviate my frustrations this week? Can anyone tell me? There was a time when women gathered for a container party they referred to as a Tupperware party. I would most openly embrace a mass gathering of women and have a container party more of a can't contain her party, branded as a Chuckerware party. Women chuck it until all others become aware of it. This presentation is not about political associations, nor is it a presentation demonizing men. This is about a history rarely discussed, seldom taught, and never mentioned in conservative household Skinder history. All men are created equal and that they have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Women, however, not so much. Women being independent? What? Can you just imagine? Thomas Jefferson and his 4 horsemen of this apocalypse imagined just that as they laid quill, excluding women from the Declaration of Independence. This presentation aims to unify all women, regardless of differences, bound together by injustice, abuse, discrimination, and objectification made acceptable by a male-dominated sociological hierarchy. This may bind us. Working together, not attacking, disrespecting, or spreading vile untruths about each other will free us. A man cannot do what a woman needs to do. Think about that as we share just some of our history to
19th century America. The Industrial Revolution brought some changes that were beneficial for women, as many began working in factories rather than being confined to traditional domestic labor positions. However, between 16% and 23% of women aged 16 or older were employed in manufacturing industries from mid-century to 1900. Industrial Revolution or not, women could not vote, and they had no property rights. Any wages they earned or property they managed to obtain were required to be turned over to a priority for women. They had only limited access and were often barred from attending college or university. Even the laws favored men when it came to custody and divorce. Legal rights? What's that? Women had few legal rights and were considered subordinate to men. Married women were legally dependent on their husbands and had no separate legal identity. They could not own property, sue or be sued, or control their reproduction. Husbands had the power to imprison or beat their wives. These are the very laws that some states are attempting to reinstate, aiming to strip women of control over their reproductive rights, effectively giving that control back to men. Women were expected to take care of the home while overseeing their family's moral values. The irony, they were expected to bow down and kiss the arse of men. Women who resisted these gender roles faced harsh treatment. Of course, simply because it was legal to do so, often ending in S, A, and D, A, due to the lack of data collection in the 1800s, accurate statistics on domestic violence, or SA, against women are not available. However, historical records indicate that such abuse was widespread and largely considered a private matter, with most cases going unreported. Sociological norms granted husbands immense power over their wives, contributing to high rates of abuse. In the 19th century, marital sauvage was not considered a crime in most jurisdictions. Women were often legally mandated to submit to their husbands sexually. This was the time of my grandparents. They lived until I reached my mid-20s. Doesn't it freak you out just knowing that your grandmothers were subjected to this? It's surreal to think that I know someone who endured such treatment. Honestly, I was supposed to present on the early 20th century as well. Absolutely exhausting. I hope you don't mind if I go take a nap. But of course, you know this isn't me taking a nap. Avatars don't need naps. It's that funny man behind the curtain who always needs a break. A new century? Whoopee. Women. Prior to the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920, only 4 states, Wyoming, Colorado, Idaho, and Utah hallowed women to vote. Despite this milestone, the treatment of women did not change significantly. However, by 1900, every state had passed legislation modeled after New York's Married Women's Property Act of 1848, which granted married women the right to retain their own property. According to Wikipedia, during World War I, women entered industries such as chemical manufacturing, automobile production, and iron and steel manufacturing fields that were once considered inappropriate for them. Women also found employment in transportation, including railroads, driving cars, ambulances, and trucks, as well as in nursing, munitions factories, farming through the Women's Land Army, shipyards, and engineering roles. While women supported the war effort by working in business, industry, and retail, they were still paid only a fraction of what men earned. Many women continued to work as domestic servants. The contributions of women during World War I helped fuel momentum for the suffrage movement. Finally, in 1920, the ratification of the 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote. With the passage of the Homestead Act of 1862, anyone could become the owner of a homestead, including women. However, the legal principle of coverture continued to affect women's rights well into the 20th century. According to Britannica, coverture is an Anglo-American common law concept derived from feudal Norman customs, dictating a woman's subordinate legal status during marriage. The 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution asserts that no state can deny equal protection of the laws to any person within its jurisdiction. Despite this, women's legal standing was fundamentally governed by their marital status.
After World War II, societal expectations pushed women back to the domestic front, where they were responsible for household chores, childcare, and creating a supportive home environment for their husbands. The prevailing view positioned women as subservient to their husbands, often prioritizing their needs and desires above their own. This dynamic resembled a form of slavery, with the only difference being that disobedience could lead to physical violence rather than punishment. In the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, society largely accepted wife beating as an unfortunate real-issue private family matter rarely intervened upon by authorities. Even when laws existed against domestic violence, they were seldom enforced. Shockingly, some doctors in the 1960s and 70s believed that wife beating could be therapeutic, mistakenly thinking it helped balance mental differences between couples. It's almost unfathomable that this was considered acceptable, and I can only imagine the outrage of those who lived through it. Notably, there are no reliable national statistics on the prevalence of domestic violence during these decades because it was largely viewed as a private issue. Although wife beating was formally illegal in all U.S. states by 1920, it wasn't until the 1970s that the women's movement, grassroots feminist activists, and formerly battered women launched a nationwide campaign to expose domestic violence. They sought to provide shelter and support, demanding radical changes in law, medicine, and societal attitudes. What I'm about to show you next comes from a high school textbook taught in home economics class in the 1950s. This was the expectation and social norms regarding women and their role. If you watch some of the older television programs, like Leave It to Beaver, Ozzie, and Harriet, they validate the expectations.
Take you back to the time America was great, a time of family values, morality, and Sunday school, a time when women were the most important to their home, family, and operational oversight of their environment while maintaining the needs of the system's requirements. Without deviation of the organizational master plan, this was the expectation and the role of women during this great time of our American society. 1950s and the 1960s, EOP and B, and some good old apple pie.
Have dinner ready. Plan ahead, even the night before, to have a delicious meal ready on time. This is a way of letting him know that you have been thinking about him and are concerned about his needs. Most men are hungry when they come home, and the prospect of a good meal is part of the warm welcome needed. Prepare yourself. Take 15 minutes to rest so that you are refreshed when he arrives. Touch up your makeup, put a ribbon in your hair, and be fresh looking. He has just been with a lot of work-weary people. Be a little gay and a little more interesting. His boring day may need a lift. Clear away the clutter. Make one last trip through the main part of the house. Gather up the books, toys, and newspapers. Dust the tables so that they appear clean. Your husband will feel that he has reached his haven of rest and order. Doing this for him will give you a lift also. Prepare the children. Take a few minutes to wash their faces and hands. Comb their hair and change their clothes if it is necessary to make them look presentable to him. They are God's creatures, and your husband would like to see them playing their part. Minimize all noise. At the time of his arrival, eliminate all the noises of the washer, dryer, dishwasher, and vacuum. You've had plenty of time to do these things during the day. Don't do them now. Encourage your children to be quiet. Be happy to see your husband. Greet him with a warm smile. Do not greet your husband with problems or complaints. Don't complain when he is late for dinner. Count this as minor when compared to what he had to go through today. Make him comfortable. Have him lean back in a comfortable chair or suggest that he lie down for a few minutes in the bedroom. Have a cool or warm drink ready for him. Arrange his pillow and offer to take off his shoes. Speak in a low, soft, soothing, and pleasant voice. Allow him to relax and unwind. Listen to him. You may have a dozen things to tell him, but the moment of his arrival is not the time. Let him speak first. Make the evening his. He is special. Never complain that he does not take you out to dinner or to other pleasant entertainment. Instead, try to understand his world of strain and pressure, his need to unwind and relax. Remember that you relaxed all day waiting for his return. Now it's his turn to enjoy what you enjoyed. Try to make his home a place of peace and order, a place where your husband can relax in body and spirit.
Are you not yet envious? Isn't it swell? Isn't that great? Let me ask you a question. Is this what you want to return to? If I had to guess, I would say absolutely not. I am in complete agreement, 100%. The 1960s marked a time of significant change. The women's movement became fierce and relentless, refusing to back down. However, many men believed they could take whatever they wanted, and we still see remnants of this mindset today. Just look at examples like Harvey Weinstein and Bill Cosby, unfortunate products of a time when such behavior was often overlooked. In the early 1970s, those seeking to leave abusive relationships found little to no support. Domestic violence was frequently dismissed by law enforcement and the legal system. Finally, in 1969, no-fault divorce became legal, making it easier for women to obtain a divorce without facing the burden of proving wrongdoing. It wasn't until 1974 that women could open checking accounts or obtain credit cards in their own names. Prior to this, a husband's signature was required. The Violence Against Women Act, signed into law by President Bill Clinton on September 13, 1994, was a landmark achievement. This federal law established domestic violence and sexual assault as crimes and mandated a coordinated community response to violence against women. Before the Violence Against Women Act, resources for women experiencing domestic violence were severely limited. Inconsistent state laws, a lack of dedicated police units for domestic violence cases, inadequate shelter funding, and the absence of a national hotline meant that women had very few options for support or legal protection when facing abuse. Essentially, the system was not designed to address violence against women effectively on a large scale.
The United Nations. Adopted in 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that all people are born free and equal in dignity and rights. It affirms that everyone is entitled to all rights and freedoms without distinction of any kind, including sex. This document also includes the right to equal pay for equal work. The United Nations, UN, recognizes reproductive rights as a cornerstone of sustainable development and a fundamental aspect of women's rights. The UN outlines reproductive rights to include the right to make autonomous decisions about reproductive health and sexuality, the right to access information, education, and services, the right to non-discrimination in healthcare, the right to safe pregnancy and delivery, the right to adequate antenatal and postnatal care, the right to family planning counseling, the right to modern contraceptive methods, the right to support for becoming pregnant, the right to care and counseling for miscarriage or postpartum depression. The UN emphasizes that reproductive rights are essential for gender equality and for enjoying the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. The primary reason the United States has not signed many UN human rights treaties is a deep-seated concern about surrendering national sovereignty. There is a fear that international bodies could interfere with domestic policy decisions, particularly regarding the enforcement of human rights within the country. This belief is often coupled with the notion that U.S. domestic laws already adequately protect human rights, rendering international treaties seemingly unnecessary. While the U.S. has signed some human rights treaties, such as the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CDAW, it has not ratified them. The overturning of Roe v. Wade was an intended assault on women's rights concerning reproductive health and bodily autonomy. This issue traces back to the beginning, when a man named Moses wrote the book of Genesis. He described an omniscient God who knows the outcome of all things, the Alpha and the Omega of existence. One has to wonder why, knowing the outcome beforehand, God placed the tree of knowledge in the middle of the garden and said, "Do not eat its fruit." It seems almost like a setup from the start. The blame often falls on Eve, but it was Adam who ultimately ate the fruit. The evidence is right there. It's called the Adam's apple for a reason. This narrative, like much of religious doctrine, was written by a man who exhibits narcissistic and dictatorial tendencies. Tell me I'm wrong.
We could discuss this subject endlessly, yet what we've covered is only a small taste of the injustices and abuses that women have endured throughout history. I encourage everyone to research this topic for yourselves. There is so much more to uncover than you can imagine. However, we must conclude at some point. I would like to offer some advice to the young women and men of the next generation who will take on the mantle of leadership and advocacy. Remember, old men often hold old ideas, and their perspectives are rooted in the time of their relevance. Please don't adopt what is outdated. Instead, bring forth what is new. You are the new generation, and when the old guard passes away, you will have a clean slate to work with. What these older individuals fail to realize is that to remain relevant, one must continually reinvent oneself. This is the path of evolution. I hope you can see the importance of unity. As women, we can do anything, and collectively we can achieve total independence. We can do what we need to do, not what men cannot or never do.
If I should stay, I would only be in your way. So I'll go, but I know I'll think of you every step of the way.